Right, so whilst the Rochdale by-election remains ringing in the ears of Starmer's Labour, having suspended their candidate and in all likelihood handing the seat to George Galloway, not incidentally with the now former Labour candidate giving up, by the way, because he's now standing as an anti-Starmer candidate, such as a Blairite scorned. Well, the whole spectacle there, however, shone a light down on Labour's weaponisation of anti-Semitism and how it has failed to deal with other forms of racism treated as secondary to that, notably Islamophobia and anti-black racism, exposing how Labour chose to give a free pass to members of the Starmer faction here and not others, racist by default. But now another demographic have highlighted the racism of Starmer's Labour against them, adding even more of a headache to his administration, though given in this case it is regarded as the last acceptable form of racism by far too many people, will Starmer rise to deal with this or compound his failure to actually combat racism even further? Right, so what's the story this time then, Damo? You're being uncharacteristically enigmatic in your intro. Well, if I were to ask you what the last acceptable form of racism is in this country, what would you say? Could you buy into, for example, the Maureen Lipman view that it is anti-Semitism? Given it's all anyone ever seems to bring up, certainly over the last several years, you can probably see how mad that view probably is. But fundamentally, it's the sort of racism that can end up on campaign literature. The sort of racism that an entire demographic means they can be attacked and still be a vote winner. And it is, of course, racism against the Gypsy, Roma and Traveller communities. Numerous Labour figures, not uniquely Labour, but notably, have attacked these people, persecuted throughout history as they have been. One notable example is Mr. Anti-Semitism himself, the former Labour MP who took a peerage from the Lords and became their anti-Semitism czar, John Mann. When MP for Bassetlaw, he wrote a handbook entitled the Bassetlaw Antisocial Behaviour Handbook, which included sections on how to deal with youth loitering, graffiti, neighbours from hell, and travellers. Well, this is a guy who is so vocal on his supposed support for Jewish people, yet denigrates the GRT community. The Holocaust, it should be remembered, didn't just see an extermination of Jewish people, 6 million of them, but up to 1 million Gypsies, Roma and Travellers were wiped out too, amongst other demographics. I fail to see how you can pick and choose if you're genuinely about standing up for historically persecuted people. Yet here we are. Anyway, to the here and now. Because in the here and now, and this is something I've spoken of before, there is a Metro Mayor election coming up in the North East. Labour were formerly represented there by the excellent socialist Mayor Jamie Driscoll, but being seen as the last elected Corbynite figure for Labour, and of course having committed the crime of socialism, he of course had to go, despite a record of achievement Starmer could only dream of. In the job creation and prosperity Driscoll has brought, he's become a very popular Metro Mayor, the North of Tyne Metro Mayor. But with Driscoll not selected, resigning from Labour and now standing as an independent, Labour selected the god-awful Kim McGuinness. Now, McGuinness has been Police and Crime Commissioner for Northumbria and is known to have made an anti-Gypsy tweet for which there was justifiable hell up. But she was never questioned on this. And of course, because it seems anti-GRT sentiment is very much regarded as some kind of second-class racism, it hasn't hindered her one bit. Well, the Traveller movement are now doing so, putting this very much back on the agenda now before anyone decides to back McGuinness before she answers for her conduct. Now, the Traveller movement has existed since 1999 and gained charitable status in 2003. It offers a number of services to help marginalised members of GRT communities in the UK. And this can range from lobbying and organising to access to justice and legal support, building positive presences within communities and helping them be heard, as well as supporting GRT members into employment and a lot more besides. They do an awful lot of good work. Unsung heroes fighting division that for too many is still seen as acceptable. Well, on the matter of Kim McGuinness and her continued candidacy, the fact she has made no acknowledgement of her past comments, no apology for them, heck, standing by them might still be a vote winner for her for some, hence the issue, showing the work still to be done to end racism against GRT people, that they have now registered a formal complaint with the Labour Party for the publicly made racist slur Kim McGuinness made. Addressed directly to Keir Starmer, their complaint reads, "The Traveller movement are writing to complain against the selection of Kim McGuinness as the Labour Party's candidate as Mayor for the North East. It has come to light that the current Police Crime Commissioner for Northumbria has in the past made racist comments online against Romany Gypsy, Roma and Irish travellers. The Traveller Movement is a national charity working to promote equality and human rights for Gypsy, Roma and Traveller communities in the UK. We aim to challenge discrimination and break down barriers in education, health, employment and the criminal justice system. The Traveller Movement works with Gypsy, Roma and Traveller individuals and families to tackle prejudice and promote community cohesion. In a tweet in 2011, Kim McGuinness wrote, "F off, I'm not a gypsy," in reply to a tweet. Both the original tweet and the reply have now been deleted. The term gypsy is an exonym derived from the word Egyptian, given to the nomadic groups of people who migrated to Europe from northern India. Whilst the term gypsies is often used to refer to English Romany gypsies, Scottish gypsies or travellers, Welsh gypsies and other Romany people in UK data collections, the word gypsy is considered a racial slur for members of Roma communities. The word gypsy has often been used as an all-encompassing racial slur throughout the centuries to justify the discrimination and persecution of all nomadic peoples, including the Romany gypsy, Roma and Irish traveller people. Tragically, the Nazi regime murdered Roma people in their hundreds of thousands during the Holocaust. The use of this language perpetuates the systemic racism that Romany gypsy, Roma and Irish travellers face on a daily basis. Since this tweet, Kim McGuinness has not made a public apology, nor is there evidence that she has committed to ending systemic racism faced by Romany gypsy, Roma and Irish travellers as a councillor or as a police crime commissioner. We are particularly concerned that the Labour Party has deemed it fit to have a police crime commissioner who harbours these racist views, considering the long history of police harassment and the prioritisation of enforcement of Romany gypsy, Roma and Irish traveller communities. We would like to know how Kim McGuinness was selected as the Labour Party's candidate for Leamington Ward on Newcastle City Council 2015, as Police Crime Commissioner for Northumbria 2019, and now as the party's candidate for North East Mayor 2023, when her racist views were on record. We understand that some of the selection decisions were made before your election as leader of the Labour Party. However, in your statement this week, you stated that the Labour Party has changed under my leadership. We would request you stick to that statement and treat the racist language used by Kim McGuinness in the same way as the former Labour candidates in Rochdale and Hyndburn. Romany gypsy, Roma and Irish travellers need assurance that our elected officials act in their interest free from prejudice and need to see strong action carried out by political parties when their members and officials are racist towards our communities. The Traveller Movement is happy to work with the Labour Party to help eradicate anti-Romany gypsy, Roma and Irish traveller discrimination from the party and look forward to working constructively with you. Well, there's the gauntlet thrown down, isn't it, really? That's a strongly worded letter, and if something like that came from, say, the Board of Deputies or Labour Friends of Israel or the Jewish Labour Movement, the accused would likely be suspended before their feet touched the floor. But for the GRT communities, well, Starmer has dragged his feet, suspending Azar Ali in Rochdale and Graham Jones in Hyndburn, as referred to in that letter, for their anti-Israel comments. They weren't anti-Semitic, but because Labour treats anti-Zionism as the same as anti-Semitism and has suspended or expelled so many members on that basis, Starmer was frankly hamstrung and is damaged going forwards as that weaponisation of anti-Semitism now comes back to bite him on the backside, deservedly so. But here we have another candidate, another form of racism, and if Starmer fails to act to suspend Kim McGuinness, equal treatment for all after all, again the GRT communities and the Traveller Movement itself can point to it and say Labour doesn't treat all forms of racism equally, and there's a whole new other form of racism that Labour will be failing to act upon that all of a sudden will be thrust into the public eye. Traveller hate has to stop. It's no more acceptable than any other form of racism. And Labour once again are the ones exposed most of all for failing to deal with it. I fully expect Starmer to fail on this too. The fish rots from the head after all, hence so much of Labour's racism problems. The very same phrase so many of these awful people used to use against Jeremy Corbyn, which is now being used against Starmer and co, and correctly so. Which you can find out all about here on this video recommendation, which I highly recommend of course, and I'll hopefully catch you on the next vid. Cheers folks.